Hello guys, and welcome to this week's episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. So, as you saw from the title that you clicked on to get here, today it's a discussion episode. We're going to talk about fashion watches and why I think they get a little bit of a raw deal in the watch collecting industry. Before we hop into that, just a real quick wristwatch check. I'm wearing the C60 Trident Pro GMT from Christopher Ward. It was the watch that I picked today. Hasn't been getting a lot of wrist time these past couple weeks. I've actually been wearing my Hamilton a lot lately. I've been wearing my Sal Baltimore a lot lately. But this one I wanted to grab today to do this video. So yeah, fashion watches are definitely I don't even want to say a controversial topic, because I think the vast majority, I might be overgeneralizing. I think a lot of watch collectors, a lot of people that are watch enthusiasts, people that are watching this video, for example, I think look down their nose at fashion watches a little bit, and I can understand why. My defense of them is not going to be based on their quality. It's not going to be based on, the brands themselves that put them on there. When I talk about why I think that they do get a little bit of a bad deal or bum rap in the industry, because like I said, those aspects of it aren't really defensible. I mean, and most fashion watches, and I should probably clarify what I'm talking about when I'm mentioning a fashion watch. Generally, a fashion watch is a brand name watch, but it's more based on a popular, usually clothing brand. So when I say that, I'm talking about like your Fossils, your Michael Kors, your Guess watches, and even for the purposes of this discussion, we can lump Invicta into the mix. We can probably lump more recent Movado watches into the mix if you're looking for higher end. Obviously, like Tom Ford, things like that. So these fashion brands that typically deal in clothing or other items, but also happen to make wristwatches. And actually, Fossil has their hands in most of these. I actually have a list here of all the companies that Fossil makes watches for. So besides their own stuff, Burberry, DKNY, Armani, Columbia, Diesel, Lagerfeld, Kate Spade, Michael Kors, Callaway, Marc Jacobs. So like the list goes on and on. Fossil definitely having their hands into a lot of this stuff. And then also you see in more, also a more modern development that most people know is MVMT or movement watches as well, also falls into this mix. We all know the watches that we're talking about. They're usually relatively cheap quartz watches. They usually, if you pop open the case back, they have a lot of empty space in there near the quartz movement. The design is usually sometimes what I would classify as maybe a little gaudy, maybe a little more eye-catching. They tend to be larger watches. It's not uncommon to see watches, especially if we're going to get into Invicta and stuff like that top like 50 millimeters in width and dimensions of that nature. But again, these watches are typically looked down on because of their craftsmanship, because of the fact that they're just mass-produced. There's really no heritage to the watch brand at all. Though Fossil, you can make an argument. And I mean, Fossil is an iconic brand. I don't think it's fair to say that it's not, but to me, it's not iconic in the same way that like Rolex, Omega, Hamilton, Swatch, like those brands to me have an extra layer of gravitas. And again, that's probably my bias coming in as someone who's enthusiastic about mechanical watches. But the fact remains, and even Seiko and Citizen and brands like that as well. But the reason that I think that fashion watches deserve, I don't know if I should say I respect, but I guess the reason that they shouldn't be poo-pooed and looked down their nose at is because, especially with like my generation and maybe the previous generation, because we grew up in an age where smartwatches didn't exist, but quartz watches were the norm. They were kind of just what was out there. I've said it in previous videos, I didn't even really understand what mechanical watches were until relatively recently in my life. And so the reason that I think that fashion watches definitely have a place in the industry and definitely I think are not not companies that I look down my nose at, is because I think that they are responsible for bringing a lot of watch enthusiasts into the fold. There's so many people that I know, around my age, where a watch from Fossil or a watch from, a company like that, something that they bought at like a JCPenney's or a Macy's or a Hex, if you guys are old enough to remember Hex, some of you guys that are watching out there, if their first watch they bought as an adult was a Fossil watch, or was a watch that might have one of these other, fashion brands on it. My first watch that I ever owned was a Timex that I had when I was a kid, my father's Iron Man that he passed on to me, and I bought a couple more Timexes after that. But the first analog watch that I ever purchased, the first one with a traditional watch face, was a Fossil watch, and that's what I bought exclusively for pretty much 15 years before I discovered the wonderful world of mechanical watches. And look, they create a relatively inexpensive entry point for people. Now, not to say that there aren't fashion brands out there who charge a premium based on the name that's on the watch. I'm looking in your direction right now, Tom Ford. So I'm not saying that that doesn't exist, but companies like that, companies like Fossil, do make watches that are in a price bracket that is very appealing, especially to a younger generation that's maybe looking for something that's more of an adult watch, but they don't have the knowledge or the know-how to seek out like a Seiko or a Citizen or an Orient or brands like that that are in the entry-level range. And actually what I found that's helped me do is having that entry point, having that touchstone of having a Fossil. Or a friend of mine that I was talking to a couple weeks ago had a Movado watch that he bought when he got out of the military for like, a couple $100. That was his favorite watch that he had. For me, that has served as an entry point, a way to open the door to having a conversation about the greater world of mechanical watches that are out there. And then the other reason that I think that they're still important and relevant, especially in today's world, is when it comes to smartwatches, because smartwatches, Apple Watches, Android Wear or Wear OS or whatever it's being called nowadays, all the Samsung Gear watches, those are becoming a much bigger part of the watch industry. I would argue that your average 20-year-old out there right now, when they think of a watch, the first thing that they think of is an Apple Watch or another smartwatch of some kind. So I think that having these fashion brands that still sell traditional analog timepieces, quality, worth it though they may not be, I think is still incredibly useful, and I think it's still incredibly important to have these brands out there to, again, give a younger generation a way into this world, essentially, if that makes sense. And like I said, if that's where they stop, if they never seek out anything greater than that, then so be it, and that's what it is. But again, I just met so many people who, like I said, started with fashion watches, but graduated onto a proper mechanical watch. And so for that reason, I think they're super useful. And look, I'm not saying that that it's not that they're not worthy of derision. Obviously, they still definitely can be in certain areas. But I do think that dismissing fashion watches outright is not the right way to go about it. I think that they do have some use and they do have some importance in this industry. And look, I think honest to goodness, I think that the watch industry as a whole would be worse off without them being in the marketplace. So that's my discussion this week on fashion watches. I would love to know what your guys' thoughts are on the fashion watch industry as well. Do me a favor, leave it in the comments down below. Love to see some really cool discussion about this, because again, I know it's a topic that is generally kind of polarizing. I know there's some people that really hate them, and some people that I think agree with me, that I think find them useful. So I'm curious to hear what you guys think about it below. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. Again, if you are new to the channel, if you found this video entertaining or informative, hit the like button. If you've not yet subscribed, do me a favor and hit that red subscribe button down there and ring the bell icon so that you never miss a new episode. And of course, every video I ask for a follow on Instagram. If you've not done so yet, go to @buddingwatchenthusiast and follow me on there as well. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all next time.